Everything that dies feeds what comes next. The world does not end, it turns. You stand within a movement older than memory. Leaves fall, bodies return. Waters darken and clear again. Nothing pauses, nothing is spared, and nothing is wasted. What appears as ending is only the world changing its grip. Look closely. The ground beneath you is alive with what has passed. Every step presses against histories uncounted. Bone softened into mineral. Wood loosened into dust. Breath once held, now released. The earth does not mourn what it receives. It opens, it accepts, it works. This is the first teaching of nature. Continuity does not require permanence. Form is not preserved. Relation is. What falls returns, and what returns is restored. The ancient words speak plainly, without consolation. They do not promise survival of shape. They promise participation in rhythm. The world remembers by transforming. It carries forward not the face, but the force, not the name, but the nourishment. You were taught to fear disappearance, to imagine death as loss without answer. Yet everywhere you look, disappearance is the method by which life continues. The forest does not grieve the fallen tree. It grows through it. The river does not keep what enters it. It carries it onward, changed. This turning is not violent. It is not kind. It is precise. Petals loosen. Insects gather. Roots receive what light has finished with. The sun withdraws. The soil opens its dark mouth and does not refuse. What was upright leans down. What was distinct dissolves. And in that dissolution, something else quietly prepares. There is no rupture between life and death here, only exchange. You are not watching this from outside. You are inside it now. Your body already participates. With every breath you borrow and return. With every step, you press into the work of centuries. The boundary you imagine between yourself and the world is thin. Thinner than skin, thinner than thought. The turning world does not hurry. It does not explain itself. It simply continues. This is not a story of rescue. It is a story of belonging. To see the cycle is not to escape it. It is to recognize the law that has always held you. The same ground that receives the fallen leaf will one day receive you, not as a rusher, but as offering, not as silence, but as preparation. The garden does not bloom despite decay. It blooms because of it. And so we begin here, where all things return. Not at the end, but at the turning. Beneath every living surface lies a depth that does not forget. Not in images, not in names, but in substance. Soil is the world's memory made slow. Everything that has lived eventually enters it. Bodies soften, fibers loosen, structures collapse into grains. What once stood apart becomes mixed. There is no archive here, no preservation of form, yet nothing vanishes. The ground remembers by receiving. You were taught to think of memory as something held in the mind. But long before thought, the earth learned another way. It keeps by changing. It stores by breaking down. What cannot remain as shape remains as nourishment. This is not destruction. It is conversion. What was cast down became nourishment for what rose. The ancient text speaks without metaphor. Fall is not punishment here. Descent is function. To be lowered is to be made useful again. The soil does not judge what enters it. It does not sort the noble from the forgotten. It works with everything it is given. Bones become calcium. Leaves become sugar. Flesh becomes warmth for roots. Time is the only tool required. The ground waits. It has learned patience beyond sorrow. When you kneel and touch the earth, you touch centuries layered into silence. Every handful contains the residue of lives you will never know, not as ghosts, not as stories, as matter remade into support. This is where individuality loosens its grip. Names do not survive here. Faces do not endure. But relation deepens. What was once separate becomes shared. What was once contained becomes distributed. The soil teaches that belonging does not require recognition. It requires participation. You fear being forgotten. The earth does not. It accepts without memory of loss. It receives without needing to recall. And in that forgetting, it prepares the conditions for return. Roots do not ask what fed them. Seeds do not inquire whose body softened their bed. Life rises without biography. Continuity does not need narrative. The soil is dark, but it is not empty. It is crowded with quiet labor, bacteria turning death into chemistry, fungi threading connection through decay, insects breaking the last hardness of form, an intelligence without thought, precise and unrelenting. This is where the cycle begins again, though it never truly stopped. You will one day enter this same process, not as a punishment, not as reward, as completion of a circuit already in motion. Your body already knows this. It sheds cells, it replaces tissue, it practices return while you are alive. The soil waits without impatience. It has always been ready, and when the time comes, it will not ask who you were, only what you can become again. Every seed enters the world by disappearing. It does not announce itself. It does not remain visible. It falls into darkness and allows the earth to close over it. What looks like burial is the first condition of growth. What looks like ending is preparation. A seed does not survive intact. It breaks. The shell splits. The interior softens. What once protected the seed becomes an obstacle it must overcome. Growth begins only when the seed agrees to lose its former shape. Nothing emerges without surrendering what it was. This is not violence. It is design. The ground does not rush the process. Moisture enters slowly. Pressure builds quietly. The seed rests in darkness long before it moves. There is no sign of life above the surface. Yet below, transformation has already begun. From the depth came forth the new light. The ancient words speak of emergence, not rescue. Light does not descend to save the buried thing. It rises because the conditions are ready. Depth is not the opposite of life. It is its threshold. You were taught to associate death with finality. The seed teaches another language. Death is not cessation here. It is concealment. It is a pause in visibility, not in activity. Beneath the surface, life reorganizes itself. What grows does not resemble what was planted. Roots move downward, not upward. They seek density, not air. They enter the very darkness that frightened the seed. Only later does the green shoot rise, breaking the surface, reaching for light it has not yet seen. The seed does not remember the plant it will become. It cannot imagine height while enclosed in soil. It simply responds to pressure, moisture, warmth. It follows signals older than thought. This is how becoming works. What you call death is often the moment when former identities can no longer hold. The patterns you lived by crack. The shell that protected you becomes rigid. The descent begins, not because you failed, but because growth requires more space than your old form allows. Resistance delays this. Clinging hardens the shell, fear slows the opening, but the pressure continues. The soil does not withdraw its demand. Hidden birth is not gentle, it is precise. You are not promised continuity of shape. You are promised continuity of movement. The seed is not carried forward as seed. It is carried forward as relation, as root, as stem, as leaf that will one day fall and feed the ground again. Nothing here is wasted. Even the broken shell remains. It becomes part of the soil that supports what rises. You stand within this same logic. You are already a seed in multiple cycles at once. Parts of you are buried now. Parts of you are cracking. Parts of you are learning how to grow in darkness. This is not failure. It is preparation. And what emerges will not ask permission from what you were. Nothing lives alone. Every body you see is a temporary crossing point, a place where breath passes through, pauses, and moves on. Plants draw it in, animals release it, soil receives what remains. The exchange never stops. It only changes direction. This is the body of nature, not a single organism, but a circulation. Leaves open their surfaces to the air. They take what animals have released and turn it into substance. Flesh eats leaf. Muscle burns what leaf has made. Breath leaves again. The world inhales and exhales through countless forms, none of them permanent, all of them necessary. You were taught to think of bodies as possessions. Nature treats them as instruments. Nothing here is owned. Everything is used, then passed along. When an animal falls, the cycle tightens. Heat leaves the body. Stillness enters. Soon insects arrive. Bacteria follow. The form dissolves into smaller forms, then into chemistry, then into soil. What once moved now feeds what will move next. They received breath, and breath returned to the one. The ancient words do not mourn this return. They recognize it. Breath was never meant to remain. It was borrowed, circulated, and given back. The error was not in dying, but in believing breath belonged to the body that carried it. Plants understand this without thought. They grow knowing they will fall. Animals live knowing hunger and exhaustion. Nothing here expects exemption. Participation is the only law. Even the air remembers movement. Winds carry spores, scents travel, pollen drifts. Breath mixes with breath until no single origin can be traced. Identity loosens as exchange deepens. The forest is not a collection of trees, it is a shared atmosphere. Roots intertwine beneath the ground. Fungi relay signals. Nutrients move where they are needed. Life behaves as a system long before it behaves as individuals. Death does not interrupt this system, it sharpens it. When one body ends, many processes accelerate. What was contained becomes available. What was singular becomes shared. The cycle grows more active, not less. You stand inside this exchange every moment. Each breath you take has passed through other lungs, other leaves, other flames. Each breath you release will enter another body you will never meet. There is no private air. This is not poetry. It is mechanics. The body you inhabit is a temporary pattern through which the world moves. It gives you sensation, agency, and time. It will also give you back to the cycle that formed it. Nothing here is cruel. Nothing here is sentimental. The system works because it does not stop to grieve each transition. If it did, nothing would continue. To belong to nature is to accept this role, to be a passage, not a destination. You are not outside the body of the world. You are one of its movements, and every movement returns what it has taken. You are not an exception. No matter how carefully you build an identity, no matter how fiercely you protect it, the same law holds. You enter, you change, you return. The cycle does not pause for self-understanding. It includes you without asking. This is where resistance arises. You feel it as grief, as fear, as refusal. You want continuity of self, not continuity of life. You want meaning without dissolution. You want to remain intact while everything else turns. The body knows this tension even when the mind avoids it. Tightness gathers, breath shortens, time feels thinner. Nature does not condemn this resistance. It does not negotiate with it either. You were shaped inside a system that treats permanence as achievement. To last is praised. To end is hidden away. Death is framed as interruption rather than completion. Yet nothing you depend on operates this way. The food that sustains you ended as something else. The air that fills your lungs left another body moments ago. Participation is unavoidable. To accept the law of return is not to welcome loss. It is to stop pretending you can stand outside it. Acceptance is not calm at first. It often arrives through exhaustion, when holding on becomes heavier than letting go. This is not surrender to annihilation. It is alignment with movement. Your life already practices this rhythm in small ways. You release versions of yourself without ceremony. Beliefs loosen, roles fall away. Relationships shift, cells die and are replaced while you sleep. The cycle works quietly, long before you give it permission. What hurts is not change itself. It is the demand that change, not touch, what you call me. But the self you defend is not solid. It is a pattern sustained by breath, memory, and attention. When those conditions shift, the pattern shifts. This is not failure, it is function. You are woven into the same exchange as leaf and animal and soil. The difference is awareness. You feel the turning while it happens. You anticipate return before it arrives. That anticipation can become wisdom. or it can become fear. Nature does not rush you toward clarity. It allows struggle. Seeds do not open instantly. Bodies do not dissolve at once. Even decay moves in stages. Acceptance grows the same way, not as belief, as orientation. You do not need to approve of the cycle to belong to it. You only need to stop imagining that exclusion is possible. The ground does not wait for agreement, it waits for readiness. And readiness comes sooner or later to every form. The law of return is not imposed from above. It rises from beneath your feet. Nothing remains as it was. This is not a threat. It is instruction. Across the world, change teaches without words. Water reshapes stone by passing over it. Fire turns matter into light and ash. Time loosens even the hardest forms. Renewal does not arrive by preserving what exists. It arrives by converting it. You were taught to look for continuity in sameness. Nature offers a different lesson. Continuity lives in movement, not in form. What persists is not the object, but the process that carries it forward. This is why nothing is truly lost. What appears to vanish simply enters another register. Heat becomes air, flesh becomes soil. Soil becomes leaf, leaf becomes breath. Breath becomes body. The cycle does not erase, it translates. Death is the passage through which life recognizes itself. The phrase is not consolation, it is description. Life becomes visible to itself only when forms change. If nothing ended, nothing could appear. If nothing dissolved, nothing could emerge. Renewal is not interruption. It is the world understanding how to continue. You see this everywhere once you stop looking for preservation. Forests regenerate through fire. Fields recover through fallow. Bodies heal by replacing damaged cells. Even memory works this way. What is remembered is altered. What is repeated is transformed. Nature does not teach by instruction. It teaches by example, endlessly repeated. There is no lesson plan, only demonstration. You are part of this curriculum. Every ending you experience is also an opening into redistribution. What you lose does not remain empty. It feeds another configuration of life, whether you witness it or not. Meaning does not reside in retention. It emerges in participation. This is why fear distorts understanding. Fear focuses attention on what is leaving, not on what is forming. It mistakes transition for disappearance. It confuses the closing of one pattern with the end of all patterns. Renewal corrects this misunderstanding quietly. It does not announce itself. It works in the background, long before results are visible. Shoots push upward while the surface still looks unchanged. Roots spread while the ground remains still. By the time renewal is seen, it has already been underway for some time. You are living inside transformations you cannot yet recognize. The world is not waiting for you to understand this in order to proceed. It renews itself regardless. But understanding changes how you move within the process. It softens resistance. It widens perspective. It allows grief to exist without turning it into obstruction. Nothing here is random. Nothing here is frozen. Renewal is not optimism. It is the structural logic of existence. and once seen, it cannot be unseen. To live with the cycle is not to float above it. It is to move with awareness inside it. Harmony does not come from control. It comes from timing, from learning when to hold and when to release, from recognizing that resistance has seasons, just as growth does. Even surrender has its proper moment. Nature does not ask you to feel calm about impermanence. It asks you to stop treating it as an enemy. There is a maturity that forms when you no longer measure life by what you can secure. You begin to sense when an ending is approaching, not as threat, but as signal. Something has completed its work. Something else is preparing to begin. Those who know truth rest in change. The words do not suggest indifference. They describe orientation. Rest does not mean inactivity. It means no longer bracing against movement. It means allowing the cycle to carry you where effort can no longer hold. You see this wisdom in old forests. Trees do not rush to grow. They do not resist falling when their time comes. Their strength lies in alignment, not endurance. Even collapse serves structure. Fallen trunks shelter new life. Broken branches open space for light. Living with the cycle reshapes how you inhabit your own days. You stop demanding constant forward motion. You allow intervals of stillness. You recognize fatigue as information, not failure. You permit grief to pass through rather than calcify. Surrender here is not collapse of will. It is precision of response. You still act. You still choose. But you no longer act as if choice can suspend consequence. You act knowing that every decision will eventually be absorbed back into the larger movement. This knowledge does not weaken intention. It clarifies it. What matters is not how long something lasts. It is how fully it participates while it exists. When you live this way, fear loosens its grip. Death is no longer a singular horizon looming ahead. It becomes part of a pattern already familiar. You have released many things before. You have survived many endings. You have already practiced return. Harmony grows from this recognition, not as certainty, as trust. You trust that what leaves does not leave the world empty. You trust that what arrives does not arrive without preparation. You trust the soil to receive, the seed to open, the cycle to continue. This trust does not erase pain. It gives pain context. And context changes how weight is carried. To live with the cycle is to stand upright inside change, not armored against it, not dissolved by it, but shaped by it. The world turns. You turn with it, and in that turning you begin to rest. The world does not announce its renewals. They arrive quietly, beneath attention, beneath urgency. A seed rests in the soil without urgency to be seen. It does not argue with the darkness around it. It does not measure time. It waits within conditions that are already sufficient. The work continues even when nothing appears to be happening. So it is with you. Every ending you have known has already entered the ground of something else. Nothing was discarded. Nothing fell outside the cycle. What seemed lost was only released into a process larger than your view. The world turns, and you turn with it. Your life is not a straight line moving toward erasure. It is a curve folded into greater motion. Breath returns to breath. Matter returns to matter. Awareness loosens its grip on form and remembers itself as movement. This is not disappearance. It is redistribution. The soil beneath your feet carries more futures than you can imagine. The seed within you does not need to be forced awake. It waits for the moment when pressure, darkness, and time align. Growth begins without announcement. You do not need to resolve every fear before this happens. The cycle does not require completion of thought. It requires only participation. You are already inside it, already contributing, already becoming something beyond what you can name. The garden renews itself without promise or warning. Leaves fall, roots thicken, light shifts. Life prepares itself again and again through forms that rise, pass, and return. And so will you, not as escape, not as disappearance, as continuation. What you have been feeds what you will become. What you release opens space for what follows. The turning does not end with you. It moves through you. Ahead, the body widens, the boundary thins. The human stands not apart from the worlds, but between them, breath meeting breath, matter meeting meaning. The next turning waits. May every ending plant a seed that leads you home.